Hey guys, welcome back to the GBM podcast. I'm Parks.
I am in a library.
Yeah, we are both in a library, and today we're going to be going over a nice little topic.
1, 2, 3, 4. Books.
Yeah. So like a big part of me and Cason's like whole journey, and what we're doing, blah blah blah, is just trying to get knowledge, trying to learn. Always trying to keep a spirit of learning, no matter what we're doing, and because without that, you can't grow, and
No.
So we kind of had a discussion. We wanted to talk about our top 3 books of 2023. We're wrapping up the year. Want to take a look back and just kind of give you guys some recommendations on just some books that we really like.
Just to like start it off real brief, what makes like when you're trying to find a book, what do you usually look at when you're looking at a book?
So for me, if I'm bored while I'm reading it, then to me that just tells me there's not a lot of use for that information for me. I'm not reading just purely for entertainment. I do want to gain something out of it, but if I don't find myself highlighting large sections of a book, then that tells me that this book is probably not like what I'm. It's probably not, what my brain is like thirsting for the most at that moment. Like,
Yeah.
I think a good book gets read.
Yeah. No, I agree. When I like read a book, I usually don't try to like find. I'm not even gonna lie, like a super challenging book. I usually find some shit that's like I can like. It makes me want to pick it up after I just not got like done with the shoot or like got done with like work or something like. Something that I can chill and relax and read and like just like I don't know.
Well,
I think it's very
a book. Different people have different needs when they're reading, and for some it's you want to relax. You want to relax with a good book. A good book can help you kind of escape, but also some of my favorite books are ones that are kind of on the verge of my ability. Like I find myself having to like look up words as I'm reading it, or I find myself having to reread certain sections because like it is just enough, like just beyond what I am capable of, but still within the realm of something that's readable for me, something that's understandable for me, and so I think a good book will push you. Go ahead.
I think especially when like you're in I find myself just walking through this library and I'll just like look at titles. I'll just sit there and read titles for like an hour, just walk around and just read books and think about, man, what maybe is in this book? What could possibly be in this book? Just like try to find the most crazy and just like absurd title. And a lot of times it's like kind of disappointing because you'll find a book with like a really crazy absurd title and then you'll like kind of dip into it and it's just kind of boring.
So do you want to first, so I want to just start off I don't even know how to start this. I just want to jump in, but then I feel like there's all these like little caveats that need to be said first, but honestly we can just jump straight into it if you want. You can start us off if you would like.
Okay, so to start off the official what GBM read in 2023.
The GBM 2023. Best reads of 2023.
Best reads of 2023. I'm starting off with a very softball. This one's a quick read, very quick, kind of funny, but it's called What to Talk About by Chris Collin, and it's just a book. It's just all about conversation, how to open conversations, how to have better conversations. It's super quick, kind of funny, and it's like, I don't know, because I feel like a lot of times I will be like stuck in a conversation or like standing next to someone or sitting next to someone, and I'm just like, I don't know like what to say. I don't know how to open. I don't know if I should say anything. So like, the whole point of this book is like, it first off, it doesn't matter what you say. The whole goal is like you just start a conversation, but you don't want to like, you want to know why you're starting a conversation. You want to know kind of what you want to get out of this conversation, even if it's just like you just want small talk, you know. And it also like you kind of learn when you don't need to have a conversation, when you should kind of just not talk, when you don't have anything to say, which I think is really important. And it's very very quick book. You could like, you know, crank it out one afternoon, a little, you know, maybe in the morning or something. You have a cup of coffee, you know, just crack into it.
I also read that book, and I'd say my biggest takeaway from that book, whenever I had read it, was there was one point where he says, you know, in a conversation, or like when you're starting a conversation, don't worry about making sense. Don't worry about sounding cool. Like, if you are in a conversation with someone and all of a sudden this random fun fact that you have about lizards pops into your brain, just let it rip.
Well, yeah, because it's like, it may seem weird and it may seem awkward, but like you're adding to the conversation. And like also, I like bookmarked a little chapter where he's talking about weather, and it's saying like, okay, if you're talking about weather, don't say like, you know, how about the weather we're having right now, like the weather that everyone is experiencing, you know. He says like, you say like, you know, what's the worst sunburn you've ever had, or like where's like the coldest you've ever been, or like just the extreme, whatever your conversation is, take it to like, if it's something as mundane as like weather, like, okay, we've all experienced weather, but like, what is some crazy weather that like we can talk about? Not something that like I've ever experienced, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, because I think conversation is very important. I think that's like what makes humans special. I think that's what makes them like the like superior, you know, species, is like we can conversate, we can share information, we can share stories, we can share experiences.
Yeah, and just, you know, in conversation, don't be afraid to go out on a limb. Don't be afraid to look like a total weirdo, and don't be afraid to just say what's on your mind, because, I mean, it's there for a reason. So that was book number one, What to Talk About. So my book, my number one, my number one is, well, I guess it would be my number three. I want to start from
that was my first one, but that was my least favorite.
Okay. So yeah, same here. Mine was Mastery by Robert Greene. So I came upon this one randomly in a Barnes & Noble after Cason and I had went and shot a punk rock festival. We went and videoed that, and the whole point of that book, Mastery, is about finding your specific domain of mastery and just becoming the best at whatever you're doing. And a big part of that book is how he talks about pretty much just finding your unique niche, finding the tension in your interests, and not trying to like pigeonhole yourself in terms of what you want to be good at. Because he pretty much talks about how the more interests that you're able to combine, and the more unique ways that you're able to combine these interests, the better chance you have of being the best at that thing. So, for example, at that time, whenever I picked up that book, I was shooting videos for people in Houston, and you know, I was a videographer trying to make it, trying to get seen, trying to get recognized, and I felt like I was competing against people who were just at the absolute top of their game. And I didn't really know where to go. But I found a lot of purpose. I found a lot of meaning in concert videography and shooting things like punk shows and stuff like that. And I realized that I could shoot those a lot better than I could maybe go and shoot something like a football game, or like a sporting event, because punk rock and that sort of a thing, that's also one of my interests. And so, you know, the book pretty much taught me that your domain of mastery is pretty much the area where you can combine your unique interests in a way that previously hasn't been thought of. I'm not saying concert videography hasn't been thought of before, but I'm just saying it kind of opened my mind as to the possibilities of work. And it kind of showed me like, okay, so you can invent your own way.
Right.
And
you can do whatever you like to do, but you have to be very good at it.
You have to be very good at it.
I mean, it's a good litmus test if that's really what you want to do. Because if you're like, oh, I love shooting concert videos, but like you just can't find yourself. Like every time you go to shoot a concert, you're like, oh, geez. It's like, okay, that maybe that's not exactly what you want to do. Maybe you find it kind of interesting, but
another thing that that book kind of put me onto was the whole idea of the apprenticeship phase. And pretty much he puts forth that, like, he gives all these different historical examples, but he says that, you know, any real great artist or any great, you know, thinker or inventor or writer or whatever, they always, like, you can always find that they have submitted themselves to a usually 10-year period where they just completely immerse themselves in a given field. And I forget, I think he gave the example of John Coltrane, how he talked about how for 10 years John Coltrane just learned all these different styles of music, and he just completely submerged his identity in this learning process. And he didn't try to, you know, at the very beginning, he didn't try to be super like, oh, look at me, I'm so original, this and that. He totally submitted himself to this learning process and said, I'm going to submerge my individuality, and I'm going to, like, kind of be a chameleon of all these different styles. And then at the end of those 10 years, he ended up creating a completely new and completely fresh style of music that was totally his own. But it took that apprenticeship phase. It took that phase of saying, like, I'm not going to try to stand out. I'm not going to try to, you know, like, make it seem like I'm the best there ever is. And I'm not going to say, oh, I'm being original and this is my expression.
I think that's like, you know, it's very common with music, but just like kind of art in general, like writing, you know, painting, whatever it is, like movie making. I think it's like important because when you're young, you kind of want to, you do want to say like, oh no, this is my style and I'm only going to do it this way. I've already developed my style. But I think that there is value in like classically training yourself in something, classically training yourself in filmmaking, classically training yourself in you know, songwriting or an instrument. And then once you have all of these pieces, all of these, like, all this knowledge of the instrument of the you know, of filmmaking, you can like you can use that and you can develop your own style. Because a lot of people, I think, coin their own style or kind of, you know, say that they have their own style because it is what they are most comfortable with. You know, oh, this is my style in filmmaking, this is my writing, because that is what they are comfortable with doing, or that's how they know how to do it, or that's what they're good at. And maybe they are good at it. But I think you should challenge yourself, and you should like learn different forms of whatever you're trying to master, and learn every form, and like, in a sense, like classically train yourself in whatever you're trying to master. And then you can, you know, enter the apprenticeship phase where you're just totally engrossed in like the spirit of learning and like giving yourself to this craft. And then you can say, okay, now this is my style. This is how I'm going to do it. This is what I like to do. Instead of saying, oh no, I'm just going to do that. I'm not going to learn how to, you know, play this song, or I'm not going to learn how to make this movie because that's not what I want to do. That's not the style I want to do.
That was Mastery by Robert Greene. It really just emboldened me to chase my unique interests and try to find unique ways to combine them. And it really kind of just inspired me to really chase after mastery, like in my domain, whatever that is. And I'm still years and years and years away from, really achieving that. But I think it's not so much about like attaining that goal. I think it's more so about just chasing it. I think that's what kind of gives life meaning. But anyways, you want to move on to your next one, Cason?
My next one is Hell's Angels by Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson's one of my favorite writers. And I love this book because I like nonfiction books, but I also like a story. I don't want to feel like I'm reading a textbook. And it tells basically the story of like Hell's Angels and what like the public image of the Hell's Angels was in like the late 60s. And it's really a book about it. It kind of introduces the Hell's Angels as these like just absolute like barbarian savages. But Hunter S. Thompson wrote around them for a while and just wrote about them. And he kind of paints this picture of like they are kind of savages, but they're not just like brutally coming into town and just like killing people and just like, they're not like Vikings. They're just kind of outlaws, and they're just kind of like outliers in society, and they don't want to like kill people. They don't want to attack people. They just kind of want to get drunk and just like ride around on their dirt bikes. But I think people in that book, it kind of shows how like the like people would see that and be fascinated by like their culture and would want to like integrate themselves and would want to like hang out with them while like still being an outsider. And I mean, the Hells Angels didn't really they don't really like outsiders. They kind of just want to be left alone. And so like that's when the violent stuff would happen, and like they would like attack somebody or beat somebody up. But I think it's just like, I think that the book does like a great job of like showing how like there's these subcultures that are different from us, but like can coexist. They're very different, and like when we try to like kind of integrate ourselves into them or like romanticize them, like that stuff kind of happens. But when you just kind of understand that this different culture, this different group is like, they're different. They have a different philosophy on life, and it's not my, maybe not what my philosophy is, but it's not a directly harmful philosophy that you can kind of just like I don't know, just like I don't want to say coexist, but like in a way, yeah, like coexist, like.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so that was
Hell's Angels by Hunter S. Thompson.
And then so my next book, my number 2, is actually, I know people are going to clown on me for this, but whatever, I don't care. It's actually Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. I'd read the 12 Rules for Life. It was okay, whatever. Target, bookshelf kind of book, whatever. But Maps of Meaning is actually, I'll be honest, it was a difficult text for me. There was a lot of points where I had to stop, reread, go back, look up certain words. But that was kind of also part of the excitement for me. But I picked this book up because, like, pretty much in the book, he explains how there's this dichotomy going on between chaos and order. And pretty much at any given point in time, we have a culture that encapsulates all of the known information and all of the things that are thought to be understood. And we use this culture to pass on certain ideas, to pass on information, to help individuals make sense of the world around them, and to protect them from, everything that's outside of that sphere of the unknown, the sphere of the known. But then at any given point, we also have everything that surrounds it, which is everything we don't know, and everything we don't know that we don't know. And he talks about how, if we have too much order and we rely too much on tradition and culture and the sphere of the known, then we get into this kind of tyrannical state, this like fascistic state where, we close our eyes and we say, well, everything I already know is all that needs to be known. And he talks about the dangers of this, but then he also kind of points to the danger of completely plunging yourself into the unknown and into chaos, and saying, oh, we can just do away with all these old structures. Tradition is nothing but limiting. These are oppressive systems. Pretty much what he says is there has to always be this ongoing conversation between the existing structures and the things we don't yet know that we could bring in to the existing structure. Because with too much order, we get sterility and death, but with too much chaos, we get an influx of things that we can't control or understand, and that also equals death. And so what it takes is individuals who are willing to submit themselves to an apprenticeship of their own culture and of other cultures, and to, once they are established enough and once they have enough skill, to venture into the unknown, to do things that haven't been done, to take creative action, and pretty much to bring something back from from the unknown, from the chaos, from the underworld. And this is, you look at all the world religions and you look at all the myths of old, and all of them talk about this. They all kind of have this similar kind of structure. The hero myth, this descent into the underworld. But what it is it's a mythologization of creative action. And the person who can act boldly and do what has not been done or has not been considered yet, and can kind of codify this action for others. And it also talks about, one of my favorite passages in the entire book talked about the psychic stress that these creative individuals will undergo as a result of their willingness to kind of oscillate between order and chaos, their willingness to exit the tradition or to temporarily exit the tradition and to do what has not yet been done. So I'm about to read a kind of a somewhat lengthy passage, but to me, I read this and it just completely changed how I felt about my own creative journey, and also about my own anxieties and my own fears and my the difficult emotions that I've had to deal with in the past as a result of, because people throughout my life have told me that I'm creative and this and that, but I've always felt like it's a double-edged sword, because while I do feel like creativity is something that I am admired for, I also think that is something that I am at times reviled for. So here we go. So he's talking about the shaman. He's talking about the archetypal shaman, and in ancient cultures, the shaman was pretty much the person who would make this descent into the spirit realm and would bring back information for the culture at large to pretty much what would be the word, to bolster and make more whole the culture. But he says, the widespread practices and viewpoints of shamanism constitute a cohesive philosophy, so to speak, embedded unconsciously in behavior and image. This ritual philosophy comprises a set of observations about the nature of radical personality transformation and a set of practices designed to bring such alteration about. Shamanism is devoted to furtherance of the possibility of qualitative improvements in consciousness or general adaptive ability. So the shaman is going out, and he's going into chaos, confronting things that have not yet been considered, and then finding a way to integrate them into the existing culture. And it says, A creative illness succeeds a period of intense preoccupation with an idea and search for a certain truth. It is a polymorphous condition that can take the shape of depression, neurosis, psychosomatic ailments, or even psychosis. Whatever the symptoms, they are felt as painful, if not agonizing, by the subject, with alternating periods of alleviation and worsening. Throughout the illness, the subject never loses the thread of his dominating preoccupation. It is often compatible with normal professional activity and family life. But even if he keeps to his social activities, he is almost certainly entirely absorbed with himself. He suffers from feelings of utter isolation, even when he has a mentor who guides him through the ordeal, like the shaman apprentice with his master. The termination is often rapid and marked by a phase of exhilaration. The subject emerges from his ordeal with a permanent transformation in his personality and the conviction that he has discovered a great truth or a new spiritual world. And then he goes on to pretty much point to these different examples throughout history of these really great minds who have been known to have, issues, mental issues, and to have struggled with these. He names Nietzsche, Darwin, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Freud, Jung, Piaget. He says Cason Gore, Park Score. No. But he pretty much said, but I read this and that was my main takeaway from the book. It's just like to be creative, to really do something for the world and for your culture and for, just for people is to like in some sense bear a cross and to be willing to take on like a load. But for me, it gave me some like alleviation to know, hey, this isn't just, I'm not sad for no reason. Like there's a purpose to this, and there's a reason for like this kind of psychic load. But yeah, I thought it was a really good book. I can't recommend it enough. Maps of Meaning, Jordan Peterson.
Okay, and for my last book, my final book and my favorite book that I read this year, unless I read an absolute banger between now and December 31st, I'm pretty sure it's Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. It's an oldie, but a goodie. Classic. I think I'm not a huge true crime guy. I think it's kind of, I think true crime
played.
Yeah. But this is like one of the most comprehensive like examples of just like from the start to the end of like, to summarize it, it's basically the prosecuting attorney's whole like synopsis of the Manson trial, from like the moment that the Tate murders were discovered to the moment that they sentenced Charles Manson. It shows his whole thought process, all the evidence collection, all of the the majority of the book is about the motive, because that's the biggest thing is the motive. And I think the most interesting thing was the motive and how Charles Manson kind of had this great big idea of this like war he was trying to like incite. And I just think I think it's huge. It's pretty big. It's like 600 pages, but it's like you can read it in like 20 minutes. It's really quick. And I've read other true crimes books. I've read Zodiac by Robert Graysmith, and the problem with that book is that book was basically an evidence file. That book is every single piece of evidence that maybe could have been connected to the Zodiac, which at that time they still did not even know who he was. But this is the prosecuting attorney himself. This is basically his whole case against Charles Manson, and it's great. It's a great book. It's really easy. It's very easy to read, very simple read. My main complaint with it, though, is during the trial, the author kind of paints himself as this white knight, and he's saying, because Charles Manson was like a very intimidating figure, and like a lot of his like, you know, his power laid in like his ability to speak, and his charisma, and his like intimidation, and like his power over people with like regards to like, you know what I'm saying, like he was very charismatic and very convincing and very he had a way with his words, and he was just like a little silver-tongued devil. But the way Vincent Bugliosi puts it is like he's like kind of standing up Charles Manson. Charles Manson's trying to intimidate him during the trial, and Vincent Bugliosi's like, and I wasn't having none of it.
So
he's
it's
real
like
cool. Like,
self-aggrandizement.
Yeah, like, okay, we get it, dude. Like you got him. You put the bad guy behind bars, but and maybe he was like real, like, I'm gonna get you. But like, I don't know, that kind of, even if you were, it really doesn't add to the story much. Like, you're already the one who's sentencing. You're already the one who's like prosecuting him, and you have this case against him. Like, why you gotta add that in? You just gotta like stroke your own ego right here. But other than that, it's a great book, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
Nice. All right. So my final...
Yeah, go ahead and send us off real strong here.
My final book is one that me and Cason have spent a ton of time talking about. I make no reservations in saying that this book has genuinely changed the trajectory of my life, my career, my faith, actually. So this book is called Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World by René Girard. And pretty much in this book, René Girard is pretty much doing exegesis on Scripture, on the Bible, and he is using psychological and anthropological terms to kind of extract some observations about human nature and about sociology from the biblical text, and the story of Jesus and Jesus' crucifixion. And so pretty much what this theory that he puts forth in this book is mimetic theory. And mimetic theory is, Cason, do you want to like try to like attempt to say like what mimetic theory is?
From my understanding, mimetic theory is like kind of the overarching theory of like how people and their desires kind of like interconnect with one another and like kind of play off of each other within like a like community, a society. It's like literally like monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah. At
the very like basic level.
So no, and that I think that's a good like way to put it. And so pretty much in this book he talks about how we look to others to determine the value of things, and this causes us to want what other people want. And in the case of there's so pretty much what he says is like humans have mimetic desire. When I'm sure you've had this thing where there's somebody in your class or there's someone at your job and you've never thought about them in any kind of a way, but then somebody else says, "Ooh, did you see what so-and-so is wearing today? They look good." And now all of a sudden you see that person too, and now all of a sudden that person becomes that much more attractive to you. And this doesn't just go for romantic relationships. This goes for jobs. People want to have a certain title or a certain position because of the prestige that it brings. He explains that there's a difference in the desire to be versus the desire to do. And what ends up happening is when people are chasing the desire to be, when people are chasing status, this ramps up mimetic desire to a point where people are willing to get violent in order to claim the object of their desire. And pretty much he goes through all of these different myths. He goes through all these different historical examples of times where pretty much the level of desire in a given social sphere reaches kind of like a boiling point, and it gets to a point where there's so much pent up kind of aggression. And well, because let me take a step back here. He says that even violence is mimetic. So I'm sure you've observed this in your personal life where, everyone has like an eye for an eye mentality. Everyone says like, I want to get even, or, he slapped me, so I'm going to like slap him back, or, but I'm sure you've observed this before where maybe you hear about something in the news where there's some blood feud where, somebody kills somebody's, or like somebody shoots somebody's cousin, and then they come back and they kill two of their family members, and then you come back and like, I'm going to kill your whole family. And it pretty much what he says is like, in societies, mimetic desire will reach a boiling point, mimetic violence will reach a boiling point, tension will reach a boiling point, where we're completely undifferentiated in our desire for violence and our desire for retribution. And at this point in time, we require some form of catharsis. And during this, during the seeking of this catharsis, we will choose a scapegoat. And he talks about this thing called the scapegoat mechanism, which is pretty much once a culture reaches this point, they will select one victim to pretty much kill and to blame all of the kind of the problems of society on. You can see this today in presidential elections. Like, you can see it today. Like, people go, this presidential candidate or this president is the reason for all of our problems, and if just this person were gone, then everything would be fine. But what Girard pretty much puts forth is that all cultures throughout history have been founded on the tomb of victims. And pretty much we are throughout our history, he puts it pretty good here. He says, wait, did I lose it? Here we go. People fail to understand that they are indebted to violence for the degree of peace that they enjoy. And so all throughout history, these cultures have been founded on the exclusion of some out-group and the willingness of the in-group to commit violence against that out-group. And up until the crucifixion of Jesus, all of these scapegoat stories had been told from the perspective of the culture that did the scapegoating. But after the crucifixion of Christ, the story was finally told from the position of the victim, which totally flips the scapegoat mechanism on its head. And he pretty much talks about how since the crucifixion of Christ, we've had this complete shift in just the way we structure society. But that doesn't mean that we don't still have mimetic desire. That doesn't mean we don't still suffer from this problem. But there's two more quotes. He says, mimetic desire thinks that it always chooses the most life-affirming path, whereas in actuality it turns increasingly towards the obstacle, towards sterility and death. And then also, following Christ means giving up mimetic desire. I could talk, honestly, for hours about this book. I could honestly base my whole career off of studying Girard and mimetic desire and this sort of a thing. But I don't want to go on too long about this. I just want to say, ever since I've read this book and ever since I've really started to view Christianity from a Girardian viewpoint, it really has just shown me aspects of the faith that previously I just took on faith. I just said, well, we're supposed to think this way about it, and these are the stories that we're told, and such, and, you know, this is what I was raised in, and, you know, this is what I'm going to believe in, or this is what I'm going to defend. But this book really showed me, like, aspects of human nature that, like, once you see it, you just can't unsee it. And it really made me, like, realize, like, okay, this religion is more than just, like, silly stories we tell ourselves. This really is, like, a revolutionary way of looking at human nature and of dealing with these problems that have plagued us since before history. So me and Cason have talked about this book a lot. I've tortured this poor kid by just
I'm not a kid.
ranting for hours and hours and hours about this book. But I really can't recommend it enough. And yeah, that's my final book of the year.
Cool. I think it's only fitting to wrap this up with a question. Do you ever read the afterword? I never read the afterword. I'm like, geez, I just sat through like some 100-odd pages. I'm not reading even more.
It depends. I mean, there's times where I read the afterword. There's times where I read the introduction. Whenever I was younger, I used to not be as interested in those things. I thought that all the meat was in the book itself. But now I kind of, you know, if it's a good enough book, then the introduction and the afterword and these sorts of things, they will give you like a context, and they will kind of wrap everything up in a way that that does add. And so I guess, you know, whether or not I'm going to read the afterword, I think it entirely depends on the author. I mean, there's some authors whose afterword is totally worth reading. There's some authors who their book is not worth reading. So do we have any like announcements we need to make with the? Do we have any announcements we need to make like with the pod or like anything like that? Is that your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
no, I think stay tuned for more exciting book talk. This has been GBM Book Talk.
I want to say one more thing before we leave.
Yeah.
There was one more book that I won't go at length about it. I know you guys are ready to go, so I just wanted to read one.
We won't keep you guys hanging a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. I just wanted to read you one quote really quick. Just something that I honestly think has kind of just set Cason and I off on this whole journey that we're doing. And pretty much it's this. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all that getting, get understanding. But thank you guys very much. This has been the GBM podcast.
Thank you.